The weight categories are changing once again, and this has happened periodically throughout the history of our sport. Whenever the powers be deem that there have been too much drug use and the world records are unattainable, they wipe the world records, change the weight classes, and we start again. This is the first time where we're doing it because we've been required to by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. And the first pass, the first look at the weight categories that the current IWF board is suggesting that we adopt are just atrocious. There's no other way to put it. I cannot believe the staggering levels of ineptitude that it seems have gone into working out what weight categories we're going to have. So let's take a look at them now.
How do you like that?
So as I mentioned, this one isn't happening directly because of drug use, though it kind of is. All of the drug use has caused the IOC to suggest to the IWF, suggest is a very soft term, force the IWF to make changes to stay in the Olympics. So the legend that be, Brian Oliver over at Inside the Games, reported on some of this stuff, as you can see here. Fortunately for us, however, as stated here and as stated by Sarah Davies, athlete representative, no changes of this nature can be made without the athlete's approval. Thank goodness. So Sam Coffer has put forward a few different ideas. So instead of giving 10 new weight categories with 5 Olympic categories, he wants to cut down to 8 new weight categories with 5 Olympic categories. Sarah Davies and a lot of weightlifters obviously aren't happy about this. I totally understand why you wouldn't be happy about this. Fewer athletes to go to the World Championships and Continental Championships. My personal feeling is it's not too important if it gets cut from 10 to 8. And I think that the reason they were wanting to cut down to 8 from 10 is because it's easier to sell the TV rights, because TV companies don't want to buy a package that has 10 categories and 10 categories. So here are the categories that they are suggesting. These are the Olympic categories for the men. So the 5 categories: 58, 72, 92, 109, plus 109. Then the 3 other categories that we'd have in there would be 65, 82, and 101. Now, a lot about this is just stupid. Jumping from 70 to 92 is ridiculous. Starting as low as 58 is ridiculous. Bear in mind, there's only currently one category lower than that. On the women's side, the 5 Olympic categories they suggest are 50, 58, 71, 85, 85 plus. Again, the jump from 58 to 71 seems a bit ridiculous. And then the 3 other categories that they'd put in for the World Championships are 54, 65, and 79. So Sarah Davies from the Athlete Commission isn't happy about the fact that Sam's trying to cut it down to 8 because she says it's going to reduce participation. There'll be fewer athletes able to compete at the World Championship level. I sympathize with that. I really do. I personally don't particularly have a dog in this fight. I feel as though whatever is more likely to help the IWF sell the TV rights is what we should do at this point, because that's going to help grow the sport. If TV broadcasting networks aren't willing to buy 10 categories, then we should cut the categories down. Or we do as Sarah suggests, which is we have fewer people in a session. We just have B sessions and C sessions so that those 10 categories can sort of run quicker than 8 longer categories. So how do we determine good weight categories? Well, body weight is to some degree normally distributed. It's not evenly distributed. There aren't as many men who weigh 60 kilos as there are men who weigh 70 kilos. Or the gap from 50 to 60 on the men, there are way fewer people there than there are in the 70 to 80 kilo grab for men. It also happens that this normal distribution is skewed slightly right. So there are more men between, say, 90 and 100 kilos than there are between 55 and 65 kilos. It's a little bit more like that. Now, the world population average body weight is 62 kilos. Presumably, that looks something like 70 kilos for men and 54 kilos for women. Weightlifters probably have an extra 15% in body weight, so we're looking somewhere around 81 kilos for men, 62 kilos for women. But even that could be totally way off. And it's actually pretty difficult to work out. There isn't anywhere online that gives you great data. What we have been able to use is UK data, which is heavily skewed because people in the UK are bigger on average than other people around the world. If we look at some of this data here, you can see Europe, average body mass 70.8 compared to Asia 57.7, world average 62. But if we just use the UK data, then a normal distribution gives us a mean of 65 kilos of lean body mass. So that is not including fat mass. But this is of course general population data, so we need to make some assumptions for how much extra lean body mass an elite weightlifter will have. Now there are some Soviet studies that we can look to here. They show that body fat was around 10% at the lighter weight categories and 15% at the heavier weight categories, and then way more for the super heavyweights, but I'm just not sure how to deal with that in trying to work these numbers out. So some of the assumptions that we can make then are that weightlifters have, let's say, 10% more lean muscle mass, and then body fat percentage that the Soviet researchers show between 10 and 15%. So if we just use the UK data and we take into account the fact that we've increased the muscle mass and we've decreased the body fat percentage, and then we break up male population within the UK into sets of 10, where each gap has the same number of people, you're obviously going to see smaller gaps in the middle because most people weigh similar amounts, and then bigger gaps as we skew out towards the edges. It's just like how when we sell something like this, about 50% of the products that we buy are going to be a medium, and then extra smalls and 3XLs are going to account for less than 2% of the quantity that we would buy. So based on that UK data, it would suggest the following weight categories. For men: 70, 74, 77, 80, 84, 87, 91, 96, 108, super. Now, as I said already, UK people are heavier on average than world average people, so we would need to scale down to some degree. So if we scale down by 5 kilos, we would have the following: 65, 69, 72, 75, 79, 82, 86, 91, 103, super. And then women who are roughly 20% lighter than men will be 52, 55, 57.5, 60, 63, 65.5, 69, 73, 82.5, super. Now, I still don't feel like this is right, and actually this is proving a lot more difficult to come up with. I've spent all morning trying to work this stuff out. So I've come up with what I think feels fair. I feel like when we look at those men's categories that the data would suggest, starting at 65 and finishing at 103, even though I know that's right, and I understand that the gap between the smaller weight categories has to be bigger than the gap in the middle weight categories, just because that's how the normal distribution works, I still feel like the men's categories should start lighter and it should finish heavier. And the same thing basically with the women's. So I've come up with what I think my 10 categories are, and then the 5 categories that should be selected from that for weightlifters to represent weightlifting at the Olympic Games in Paris. Here we go: 55, 66, 72, 77, 81, 85, 90, 98, 108, super. Now from that, this is where it gets very difficult. And the truth is, there is no good way to select weight categories 5 out of these for the Olympics without making some ridiculous jumps. Here's what I've gone with: 66, which does mean that the smallest male athletes are going to have to gain weight, and that sucks. And I just don't know how to do it better. I feel like 59 would be too low. 77, 90, 108, super. And the jump from 77 to 90 seems really big, and it is big, but it means that the 81s can cut to 77 and the 85s can bulk to 90. That to me seems like it might work. On the women's side, the 10 that I've come up with are 49, 53, 56, 59, 62, 65, 69, 74, 80, and super. This isn't perfect, and in fact, the longer I spent on this, and I wrote this out so many times, and bear in mind, I've used all the data that I can find by the WHO, the World Health Organization, amongst many other credible sources. I've been using that to try and work out how best to divvy this up. It's really not easy. What we need is to see the distribution of body weights of males, females, in the age group of 20 to 30. In fact, what we need is the lean body mass of men, women, 20 to 30 of the world. But all funded studies are nationally funded studies, and so this data just doesn't exist. So I can't do a better job than this. Those are my suggestions. What are yours? Let me know down below. Tell me how much of an idiot I am. Tell me why you're way smarter. It all helps with the algorithm. Peace and love.